URA.
And now, all right. Good evening. It's a good new mic. I feel like there's an echo. Okay. Welcome to the North Bend City Council, North Bend Urban Renewal Agency combined work session for Monday, June 12th at 4:33 here in the council chambers. After calling the meeting to order, we'll go ahead and start this evening with public comments. I believe I have one person in person. Is that Mr. Andrew Brainerd?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. If you want to come on forward, we'd like to say thank you for participating in public comment this evening. The public comment period is an essential part of local government meetings. Each person has 3 minutes to speak, and our governing body is taking your input into consideration. However, in observance of Oregon open meeting laws, this isn't a time for dialogue, but rather a time for us to listen to you. Our city administrator and city recorder are taking notes of any action that is needed. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, City Council, government, and everybody here today. Just want to let everybody know that on the 29th, which is a Thursday afternoon from 2 to 5 at North Bend Lanes at the back alley there on the beautiful deck that Mark has out there, we're going to have a business stakeholders meeting regarding the current crisis that we are having with homeless. I have a panel of 15 people that are representing different agencies, going from Sheriff Gabe Fabrizio to ADAPT to our local officials and other partners that work with this every day. It gives the opportunity for those that are the local businesses that are having this homeless crisis around them, gives them an opportunity to know what's going on, how things are in the right direction, and it also gives them opportunity to ask questions as well. So again, that's the last Thursday of the month from 2 to 5 p.m. at North Bend Lanes. I appreciate your time today and hope you guys have a great evening. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Do we have any public comment online?
We do.
Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and move down on the agenda. Number 3, this evening is smoking on public property policy discussion. And we have a representative from Coos Health and Wellness here, Ms. Katrinka. How are you tonight?
Very good, Madam Mayor.
Hey.
Thank you for having me here tonight, and thank you for hearing me out. Oh, that is not the right one. Okay. We'll be fine. I sent you the wrong presentation. That's okay. So, that threw me off. This is not ours.
I do see we have a sheet in
Yes.
front of us as well.
We do. So I wanted to come and bring to the council's attention that in the state of Oregon, tobacco is the #1 cause of preventable death. It costs more lives than opioids, HIV, suicide combined. In Oregon last year, our numbers, I believe, which are part of the lovely presentation. In the state of Oregon, we had nearly 8,000 lives lost due to tobacco use. And in Coos County, that number was very close to 300. There's a significant toll because of medical costs, and additionally, because of productivity lost. People are often sick for much longer, long before retirement age. One of the ways that we can support and help families and community members is by making smoke-free areas. I understand that currently we are looking at the plan for the parks, long-term planning. And this is an area that we encourage families and our community to be present and be around. And I would like us to consider making those areas tobacco-free and smoke-free. This includes not only smoking, but vaping, and chew or snooze. I have observed myself, I live in North Bend. I use our parks. I've observed e-cigarette items dropped where they shouldn't be, not making it to a garbage can. Cigarette butts in places, sometimes even large amounts of them dumped in our parking areas. And snus, little white packets, which contain a non-tobacco nicotine and are common among our youth right now. All of these items present issues for the individual, but as a community, we can normalize telling people to remove those from common places. This supports people who are quitting smoking. It supports our youth not uptaking it in the first place because it's not normalized, and would help in the overall one portion of our move to assist Coos County in it becoming less prevalent. In the state of Oregon, Coos County has the highest smoking rate. And my goal as the tobacco prevention manager is to work on changing that. And this is one aspect of that. We also are working and offering presentations to the schools. We're working with after-school programs. All of those areas, we're working to support families and finding ways to address it, providing alternatives to suspension for students, looking at other ways that we can help in the community to address that. But this is one area that the city of North Bend could assist us in that big picture. So that is my ask.
Okay. Any questions from the council? Katrina, is this part of the blue zone? Are you involved in, is it connected to that? Like between a blue zone and cities? And maybe you could explain that a little bit to the council of what that is.
Sure. So Blue Zones was a project that looked at areas across the world that had the best health, overall lifetime health for individuals. And they looked at all of the different factors. One of them is definitely use of nicotine or tobacco. It's not a standalone, but one of the aspects of blue zones was to consider making as many areas tobacco-free as possible. And I know that that was part of our original discussion when we assisted the city of Coos Bay with becoming tobacco-free on all of their properties. And additionally, when Coos County went tobacco-free for all of their properties. And for both Coos Bay and Bandon, who did it, I think in 2012. Those areas cover parks and everything except there are a few designated smoking areas, say where there's camping that has a fire pit or something like that. But that blue zones was looking at overall community health, and that was one aspect that they requested.
Okay. Is that, Mr. City Administrator, I don't know the history if this is something that the city has ever discussed before. We have a senior counselor here who might know, a couple of senior council members, if this subject, has this subject ever been presented to the council before?
I think it has, but I don't think any action was ever taken.
What is for something like this, if it were to move forward, is it something that would need to be part of the parks master plan discussion, or is it something that could be, what would be the next steps if the council wanted to look into this further?
It would have to be, so per your council rules, obviously you discuss it, you get up to 15 minutes to discuss it. If you want to move it to an actual council item, you have to have a majority of the voting council members to move it forward. And it's a policy thing. So it is really dependent on whether or not the council wants staff to review and come forth with a potential policy change and education plan for the city.
Is the council, what is the will of the council on this subject? Is it something that you would want to move forward to an agenda item? So it sounds like what I'm hearing you say is that you would like the council to consider looking at the parks first.
Yes.
But I do have a question. If we did move it to a council discussion, I am curious what our surrounding cities are doing. Are they smoke-free in the parks? Is it also city property? Maybe those are things that we could ask maybe staff to give us some more information on that and move it to a council decision or council discussion or council item. Would that be something that this council would be up for moving that
I
forward?
think right now you're already smoke free of the buildings and stuff, right? The only thing that's not exempt is the parks.
Yeah, there's so we have designated smoking areas outside our buildings in conformity. But aside from that, you know, it would be the parks. That'd be the only other place.
Vote right.
Yeah, I see Councillor Nordhoff has her hand up.
I'm just thinking that, is this mostly accomplished through signage? At the kind of the gathering spaces in the park? You know, you have a policy probably written, you know, in the parks master plan or something, but, and possibly just a new city policy, but for all practical purposes, are you thinking that it would be postings are the most effective? Is that what you've seen the other cities do? Post signage at the picnic shelters and parking lots, you know, by the parking lots of different parks.
So the city of Bandon is posted signs. And the city of Coos Bay is actually an ordinance. So there are not only posted signs, but it is enforceable.
Okay,
And I believe it's up to $1,000 fine in that case.
Oh.
really?
Yes.
Okay,
And I do have copies of all of those policies that I can provide.
Mhm.
thank you.
Did you have thoughts, Councillor Nordhoff and Councillor Schultz?
I don't think it's a bad idea. I mean, when I take my grandson to the park, I don't want him to sit there and read cigarette smoke or vape smoke or whatever else.
Mhm.
Well, I know I went to a baseball game in McFerry Road this year, and the people, couple groups of people were having a little in-house frisbee golf tournament, and God, I thought I was gonna have to call Brownie. It looked like a forest fire, because those vapor things, man, I don't know what it is, but it's a cloud of smoke and a high old silver, you know. Yeah, I would be in favor of it, I guess.
So I haven't heard from Councillor Schultz yet, but I'm starting to think we might have a consensus to move this to an agenda item.
Yeah, I just haven't thought about it until just now, so I don't know.
Well, the good news is we don't have to make any decisions tonight, but it sounds like move it forward with an agenda item. And so we can get maybe some further information. I know there's probably some costs involved with signage and things like that. I don't know if there's ways to ask Coos Health and Wellness or other stakeholders that could potentially help pay for those signs, but that's
Yeah,
an
the
operation.
signage isn't really the huge issue. I mean, signs are costly, you know, but no smoking signs are usually standard order, so they're not custom signs. You usually order them from outside, you know, unless we put our ordinance number on them. It's the enforcement that is the issue, and you're more than welcome to, you know, talk to the captain, since code enforcement falls in that department, and that is the interesting thing. For instance, I had a counselor call, and obviously motorized vehicles aren't allowed in our parks. That doesn't stop folks from driving the motorized vehicles, you know, and so, you know, I will tell you, I'm not a fan of smoking. I told my wife I would never marry someone that smoked, and Well, I broke that rule, but she has since stopped when she had that surgery, so, but she says when she turns 80, she'll start smoking again. But it is the enforcement side, so yes, we can make it an ordinance and all of that, but when someone calls the police or
Yeah.
when someone down there, very much like, you know, a vehicle, you don't have the enforcement, and so go into it knowing that we don't have the enforcement authority. You know, if it's a huge,
Sometimes signage
if
as
it's
a
a huge
deterrent,
issue,
though.
you know, we go down there and, you know, tell folks and, you know, but
Yeah.
I'll be surprised how many tickets these other jurisdictions, if any, have written for
Yeah,
$1,000.
just keeps the honest guy.
Exactly, that's all it does, and you take out the trash, all the receptacles for the butts and everything like that, not that they're using them right now anyway.
Yeah.
You know, but staff can certainly work on some change to our existing, which probably would be more so a text change. You have thoughts, Ralph, since it falls under you know, your purview.
You have multiple tobacco users that work for the city. I mean, the smoking is one. But right now we have a butt dispenser in the police department, you have a smoking room, and almost every department has somebody that smokes. So parks is one thing. If you're looking at citywide with existing policy, you might have some issues there. I mean, signage is signage, enforcement's the other issue. Beyond that, if you're looking just at parks, I mean, that you have employees, they're not allowed smoking vehicles. In theory.
Well, it sounds like we have a consensus to go ahead and move this forward to an official agenda item for the council, unless I'm hearing you wrong. And we can have further discussion then. Okay, thank you for your presentation. If there is a PowerPoint that you wanted us to see and wanted to send it to our city recorder or city administrator, I'm sure they can either forward it to us or just make sure that we get it in some fashion.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, thank you for your information. Okay, number 4 on the agenda is the council goals discussion. We've got a little packet in front of us on some numberings and our goals. So I believe our city administrator has a discussion on this or walk us through this.
Okay. By the way, I happen to notice that new microphone was even picking up Ralph. I was watching his words across the screen, so apparently it's doing a darn good job. So it's usually at a dead area right here when you do presentations, but the new microphone seems to be working. So good job all the way around. All right, so let's see, the task for each of the council members was to go into the strategic goals and do a rank order within the tiers. There was 4 tiers, so sort of priority. You see the rankings of all. We didn't feel necessary to do anything for the 1A because there was only 1 in that category, and so we just graded out for you. You'll then see that we have this sorted by the ranking of the overall council. And so you can see the individual scores. You then see an aggregate score. You then see an average. And then this is a process that the city recorder and I worked out. So you see the average, the median, the min, the max, and the variance. So the average is the average overall of everybody. The median is the halfway point, meaning in the median, if you have a variance of the median too far from the average, it's generally a flag that says if you have a bell curve, you have an outlier somewhere. All right. And so those are called standard deviations. Not that I want to take you back to statistics class. And then you see the minimum and the max, meaning if someone gave a score, what's the minimum or the smallest score? If you see a max, you see the highest. And then you see variance. And so generally, in order to group consensus, when you do a standard deviation, generally you like to be a 0.5%, no more, of the median off of the average. All right. So in this case, I highlighted the only two areas where you have a deviation on the council. The first one is down in your 4th tier area. You see the rebrand July Jubilee. So it says 4F. And so you see that the average is 4.2, but you saw the median's 3. And so immediately, if you do an average of a bell curve, the middle point of your bell curve should be your average. So that's the 3.0. And then your points out to the right, points out to the left would be 1.2 deviations from the average. In this case, it was 1.17. So when you look at it, you see a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 8. So then you realize that one or more folks on the council are somewhere outside your bell curve. The other one was find property to develop future baseball and softball fields. And the interesting thing on this one was you're 1.33 off of the median. And that's very telling. So when you see the scores, it either meant that someone was far to the right or far to the left of the median. Well, in this case, it was 2 folks that were all the way to the far right of the median. Everybody else was on the low side on the bell curve. And so, and you see that reflective of the ones, and then you have 2 5s. And so aside from that, you have really decided your goals, but I wanted to point out your 2 variances so that before you decide that you're ready to adopt them, that those are the 2 that you have variance or outliers on the council. So you don't have full consensus, if you will. Everything else pretty much worked in consensus. You're all within 0.5 percentage point of your median to the average, which is good. A lot of statistics there, but Macy and I had fun doing this. And I think we, enjoyed the learning lesson.
So at this point, are we looking to move this to on the agenda to adopt?
So if you want to make any changes, this would be the good time, because the next time you see it, it'll be adoption so that your goals are in place for your July 1st, because that starts your 2-year cycle of budgeting for priorities of things that you want accomplished and done.
And again, this is for a 2-year period.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
which means from a staff perspective, your tier 1s, for instance, determine additional long-term funding. That's going to be staff's #1 top priority.
Okay.
We would then go down 2. We would then work towards 3. If we still have budget resources, you start to work down towards 4. And that's the way it works. It is not a list that says all of this is getting done in 2 years.
Right.
And so we need to set that expectation.
Are you gonna do like 1A, then 2A, then 3A, then 4A, or are you gonna do 1A, then 2A, 2B, 2C, 2D?
So as far as priority is, you can't accomplish one without the other. So you go in tier step. It doesn't mean that it won't be worked on simultaneously or efforts won't be worked towards that. In fact, there potentially could be some efforts towards every one of those, but it doesn't mean that it all gets accomplished within that 2-year. So for instance, if you look at the, we had given you previously the goal set from 2 years prior. There are some things that are still in works, for instance, like the branding of the signage on your southern gateway. There's work happening. We're still waiting for the sign to be produced. Once the sign gets produced, it gets installed. And so we'll actually achieve that goal, but it wasn't it's not within that 2 year, but
Yeah.
so there's stuff that's still in process that just carries over, finishing up. There was also some question, for instance, I think the verbiage was, and I don't think it was ill-intended the way, it's like, do you hurry up and then, things stop, or, the reality is there are continual things done all the time on projects. The staff resources are constantly juggling, dozens of things at any given time. And so if we have something new that comes in, we got to go back to the council and say, well, what are we going to take off, or what are we going to prioritize? And that has to be because we don't have unlimited resources. Bless you. That's just the reality. But you're constantly working on things. For instance, like, the Bay Cleaners Building, that's now scheduled for the 22nd. So that's moving. Then the next step, on that project will be, getting it cleared out, getting the tree off, getting the property cleaned up real quick. Then you're working on the design and the RFP to put it out. So there's constantly things happening. Simultaneously we're working. We've secured a talent that'll be working on the historic history for the annex in the hospital. So they'll be working on that. So there's constantly things going on some of these projects that collectively will get you.
I just didn't know if because an average was higher, because I know you talked about potentially we ranked it originally and then we thought about some things. And so I didn't know if because of the average, if we look at 4A, the average is at 8.5. So would that be a bigger deal than a 6.2, which is 2D? So I just didn't know if we were moving up from the moving categories up for importance, or if they're stuck in those zones already.
Yeah, so it is the scores within that grouping, because you were able
jump the groups.
Yes, you were able to rank within.
Okay.
The council, before it adopts the goals, can go in and modify and change. At some time within the 2 years, you can go back and redress and modify your goals and change. But generally, you try to set a 2-year strategic set of goals, and you try to focus on the strategic goals. One, because the council operates in 2-year cycles, and 2, it's what your city administrator is judged on, and 3, it's ties into your budget, your priorities, and the resources as to how we allocate, resources.
So the two that I would have a question about, in the green 4C it says continue to keep pool open. Well, we are going to keep the pool open in the next 2 years. I don't know if that's a goal, because it's not a strategic goal.
It's there.
To me, it would be more of we know that the bond or the levy was for 5 years. So the goal is more to be thinking ahead of what happens when that 5 years ends. So I don't know if that's something that we would want to reword this now, or it's really not something we have to worry about in this 2-year plan.
So staff,
And it's also covered in the yellow, which is, he says, determined additional long-term funding for city.
so for instance, once the goals are adopted, staff then goes back and we work with staff, and we actually then have not sub goals, but basically milestones to achieve the goals. And so, for instance, on the pool, you're absolutely right. I've signaled in some of the conversation is that we'll start drawing down the levy for the first time on July 1st. That buys you some breathing room, but the reality is your general fund, without some significant changes, cannot absorb that back into the general fund. And so that's why I've indicated that every department we will be coming in future work sessions, and so that the public can get educated. It's very easy for someone to come and talk about their road versus $63 million worth of road needs, or the 1.8 to $2 million at the library, the 1.8 million at the community building. These are all things, and we're not even talking about the sanitary sewer. So we're going to try to better educate the council and the public simultaneously, because the council then will have to roll up its sleeves and work with staff to make some critical decisions as to what we're going to do moving forward. Which is why number one just happens to be, which I do, is additional long-term funding. We've got to figure out, you only have a tax increment from last year to this year, and forecast for your next budget year of $140,000. Okay, economic development initiatives take 3 to 5 years to get going, and so you don't start to see or realize any tax increment until years 4 and 5. Okay, so a lot of the work going in place, it takes time. And so, for instance, like someone asked me the other day, it's like, what's the purpose of a facade grant? Well, that's always an interesting question. Is it to make it all look pretty out there? The reality is yes, you want it to look inviting, but at the same point, they pull a permit and then they ultimately have a tax increment because the property and the value of that permit is reassessed. But it usually takes about 18 months to actually hit the tax increment. And so you work on economic development, having new industry, companies, jobs, things of that. And so that, as Councilor Garbolden says, yeah, that pool runs right back to your 1A goal. And everything really will tie back to that as we have the conversations moving forward.
Yeah, I think Kip Segal has a question.
That's, I guess, why I can't see why we take that off, because that's just something that we need to be focused on for not 2 years, for 30 years, is how to fund that pool and how creative we can get, how, rates must change, how all that stuff. So I when, like Larry said, every one of those things goes back to that yellow thing, it's just like, number 2 there, the maintenance schedule on the fire departments, that's not a 2-year thing, that's a forever thing. Because it takes that to have nice stuff. We've got to be, we got to be creative on all these, but
Councilor Nordoff, did you have a comment?
Yeah, and I don't want to open some hornet's nest, but create a pocket park at Sherman in California to include 1 to 3 pieces of art. I'm all for art, that's great. However, I do have, at some point, I think it would be helpful for you and staff to brief the council on what are the logistics. We're going to have the visitor center. We're going to have RVs pulling in there. I know that Mike Vaughn and Stephanie have been working on some design. I understand Derek Payne's also working on the design. And I just have a question in my mind, how the traffic flow is going to go now that that is going to be our visitor center. How are we going to accommodate RV parking in there and still have room for pocket park?
And so
I'm curious about how that's going to work, and are we going to direct RVs around Grant Circle to come down? Because that, to me, it's going to be slow. It's going to be.
Can I,
it's scary.
Okay.
So,
all right, so
yeah,
thank you for your comment. I'm gonna have our city administrator answer that question, but I want to finish the comment on the pool first. Do we want, so we're saying here as a council, we want to continue to keep the pool open. I'm wondering though, do we reword it though, to talk about continue to keep the pool, that's not written in a strategic goal. So do we change, is it too late to change the wording of that now? Could we change the wording of that to reflect that, yes, we're keeping the pool open, but we know that time.
Some long-term funding.
Continue to seek a long-term plan past, when the levy expires. Would you be able to put, I think.
Absolutely.
Hear
It's
where
easy
we're
to
going with
finesse.
that. So it's,
I think that's good.
see where I'm going?
Potatoes.
Okay. Wording is important.
Okay. I still key up the yellow thing. That can be just everything down.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. And then the second one that I was referring to, that I said I had 2 questions, that one. And then the last one says find property to develop future baseball and softball fields.
So
I feel like that's a yes or no question. Either we have a big, large swath of land that the city owns or we don't. I don't know if that's a goal.
it came up on your goal list. The reality is I was told today, because I asked about this. You need a minimum of 4 acres.
You know, so,
The reason is Coos Bay looked at a potential ball fields out at Toppets Park as part of their larger library project. And so when they looked at the space, didn't have it. And so, you know, short of, you know, annexing or
Yeah.
expanding across the bridge or something, or trying to amass land when it comes available. And that's always the thing is as it comes available, you try to get it. But that's up to the council. Like I said, that one had the largest sort of bell curve divide. I mean, there's no question that, you know, athletics and recreation and all of that, but we're sort of, keep in mind out of your general fund, we're having a hard time just taking care of the general fund right now, which Parks is in. So the pool part may really, for instance, one suggestion that may come is a parks district that's Parks and Recreation that has the pool in the parks. When we did the pool levy, as you recall, that was one of the discussions that came up as to how large do we do a levy or do we do it a district? You also have to be cognizant is if you go that levy for side versus fee base, you start to have compression on your budget because we already have compression on our pool levy. And so because there's limits on, you know, how much tax levy can actually exist. And so
does the council, I mean, I again, clearly like parks and baseball fields are important to this council, but we are holding our staff or we're holding the city administrator responsible for this list of things. And I feel like we don't have a swath of land for a baseball
Well,
field.
and there's no contiguous land out there.
Yeah.
It's
And the city in our,
You're trying to get rid of some, that's what I do.
no, but we're saying do this. And why would we put something on a list to do when that's not possible?
I'd like to watch you sweat. What do you want?
Strike it what I want. I think we should ask the county to donate some lands for the youth to have a baseball field.
Sure.
they've offered up
Councilor
land for your
Rock, I mean,
homeless.
What my proposal to the council right now is to strike that from the list unless you think otherwise.
Then go for it.
Unless you want to replace it with work with county to see if they have some land that they want to give to the city of North Bend.
The city offered up land that you could put homeless on.
Yeah, but it's not 4 acres.
So,
No, it's not.
okay, but we don't have 4 acres. So is it, you know, why would we put something on a list that we can't do?
Scratch it.
So
Yes,
am I hearing a consensus to have our city administrator scratch that off? Okay, those were my two. So now back to Councilor Nordoff's, unless there was another, I don't think there's any more comment about the pool or those two that I had. Back to Councilor Nordoff's. So these are, I don't think we're getting into the why or the how of the goals tonight. I think we all have those same questions about what's that going to look like. But do you have any questions about it being a goal?
I just.
Did you want to strike it
I'm
from
gonna
the,
solidify this in the next, I'm sorry, is it on the agenda for tomorrow night to approve it?
No, it'll be there in 2
Okay.
weeks.
I think it can stay on. I think it's a nice idea.
okay,
So we'll see.
okay.
Yeah.
The why and the how to achieve those things are still to come.
Yeah, well,
For all the things.
if logistics make it impossible to do it, it automatically falls off.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah, we're not putting a big S on it, here over there, we're just having to do
the
the
big
best we can.
Superman. Okay, all right.
Yeah, I know, I don't have a cape.
Yeah.
Any,
I don't have a,
One would fall off that too, but we're striking it.
so our comments to you tonight are just strike, find property for the future baseball field, which unless something magically is donated to the city. And then to maybe reword the one on continue to keep pool open, where it's more like what happens after the levy, that long-term funding after the levy. Yeah, because that doesn't happen overnight. So I think that's important. Okay, any other questions before we move on from this agenda item? Okay, number 5 on the list is council vacancies. The city of North Bend has received 3 applications, I believe. Is that correct? Still is, yeah. For the city council vacancy, staffs request a consensus on when to schedule candidate interviews before the council.
all right, so. Again, back to the council. the process, the council does not have a dictated process, nor has it provided a set process. The council at any time always has the right to, one, leave the position open. Two, fill the position. Three, wait till the next election. So you have three options there. How you achieve that is strictly up to you. You had three that came in by the deadline. And so you can convey to staff how you want to move forward. And your city attorney is also online. The reason I say that is because there was a there's a verbiage in the exemption for executive session that I question on whether or not the council actually can go into executive session to interview candidates and deliberate. So that'll be a question for Mark to pull up as you all are thinking about what you all want to do and how you want to move forward. To my knowledge, we haven't released the candidate names yet, unless it's on the packet.
Yes.
So, well, there you go. So they're public record now.
So the next process, I kind of want to keep this ball rolling, you know, we're down Jenny now for a month and we're down Eric gone. I'd like to keep the ball rolling. Is it an interview? Is that?
That's up to you.
It's up to you. You could make decisions based off of the application.
Yeah.
We could have interviews. What
Whatever
would
you guys want
like
to
do, Senior Counselor Paul?
I'd like to keep it moving.
Oh,
If we'd rather, you know,
What does that involve?
yeah, Counselor Nordoff.
What
had
does
her
that
hand up.
involve?
Yeah.
There
What
could
were
be-
your thoughts?
I think we owe it to the public to fill the position. I don't
Yeah.
think we should not fill it. I think
Okay.
we should, and I'm just eager to see the applications and.
So you have the applications, right?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Would you-
and
Would you
you know,
like to
make a decision.
interview the candidates or what? How would you like to move forward?
I think we probably operate just off the application.
yeah. I would be good with that. I mean,
We don't want people to have a chance to speak.
I think that
I love an interview.
and so if we did do interviews, so you were saying that is, how would that be done? It would not be done in executive session?
So that's what I read it. And so again, I'm not an attorney. I felt like my verbiage of reading it said, well, gosh, the way this reads, you could do those interviews in executive session. But that's why we have an attorney. I will tell you that if you interview, great. I will tell you, and I only do this for humor. There is a city that picked their counselor by picking cards. There's another one that did it by picking straws. And someone thinks that there's one that recently did it with a flip of a coin. But I think we're better than that. And so with that said, Mark, what do you think on the interview process and how that might look?
So I'm pretty confident you'd have to do that in open session. There's
Mhm.
one executive session for employment of public officers, employees and agents, but that one specifically states that this does not apply to filling vacancies in an elected office. So unless there's another executive session that I am overlooking, it would just be done in open session.
What if we asked the 3 applicants to come in at the next, I guess, either work session or council meeting and present their application to us? And in addition to that, give them, 3 minutes to also say anything else that they wish that was not on the application. Would that make sense? Instead of it having to be an interview back and forth, like we went through the huge process of figuring out the questions that we wanted to ask. We're asking those, but if we wanted the candidates to say, you can tell us this with your own voice. And then also give them a few minutes to say anything else that they would like to tell us. then you.
Well, that's what the other comments were on the application.
Mhm.
So do you think we should not do an interview then? That we should just look at the
Yeah,
applicants?
Yeah, the application kind of submits what they think and what we feel and, yeah.
I do value though hearing the person
Well, yeah. I
present it
mean,
in their
I
own
got
words.
Comment towards those three, you know, we've got one citizen that's been here through all this stuff, that we've had to really have a challenge on, and I give him a little bit of credit for that, because, yeah, so, yeah, we'll. Figure what you want to do, Mayor.
Team effort.
So,
Yeah.
so Councilor Schultz, am I hearing you say that you could go either way?
I
or-
could go either way. So again, if the council, if it is
Yeah.
the will of the council that we just add applicant, I'm the newest one, so I feel like maybe I'm not confident.
I mean, there's one person that's applicant.
Yeah.
This is actually their time in to get
I,
surprised of what's going on.
Yeah. I feel very strongly that way too. And so if that was, let's play with a scenario.
I only smile because I just literally heard a consensus of 3 council members all say the same thing.
Yeah, so I hear, so let's have a scenario here.
Mhm.
What if tonight, through discussion,
Mhm.
there was a consensus
Mhm.
on these 3 applicants? And because this is a work session, we can talk through this and say,
Absolutely.
like, for example, yeah, there's an applicant here that stands out to me, that's been to the last 14 council meetings and has been paying really close attention to what's happening on. I would see that as somebody that I would consider for the council position. If there were other counselors that felt that way tonight, would we then move it to the next agenda? Like, well, we couldn't move it to the, we
You
would
could
move it.
actually move it to tomorrow if you wanted to, because you're within your 24-hour notice.
Okay, and so since it's in a work session right now, and it was on the agenda, we can speak this frankly about it.
Yeah, you
Like,
can actually speak,
I feel like-
you got wide open on an
Okay.
agenda item.
So, because I feel like we're sort of like not saying what we're saying, but I'll say it now. So there's an applicant that I'm putting at the top of the pile, Matt Hamilton, who is actually here with us tonight. Would we be able to ask him a question if we wanted to?
The work session, it's your meeting, absolutely.
So I would like to then ask him to come forward and speak about his application. Is that something that we could do?
No pressure.
Okay,
Just a
You could say no.
quick question,
Yes.
do those go in today into our boxes?
Yes.
Oh, did they go in your box?
I
Dan?
don't have
Oh,
it.
yes. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
so, Mr. Hamilton, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, good. So I apologize. I was thinking that each counselor had the application in front of them. Is it something we could make?
Go get them, they're in their boxes.
If you,
And we're also
want-
email.
we're gonna go ahead and take a 1-minute recess or,
1 minute,
well, I don't know, how fast can Macy run?
take 2 minutes.
Yeah,
Deputized
yeah.
answer. okay.
So, or not, do we need to take a recess from this room really quick?
Well, we'll go get your mail real quick.
Okay.
This stuff this morning and it wasn't there, I can tell you that.
Do you have a copy of?
I've already looked at them.
Yeah. Are we in recess? Recess?
Sure,
Sure.
body break.
I think we're still on.
Yes. Oh, it says 1 minute. Okay.
What's that? Oh,
I thought I had the best idea, the deputize.
I thought he already was. He's a fixture. I want to see what live.
You know, like,
No, who applied?
No.
thank you. You know, it's making me run.
Yeah.
It should be 3, 1 for each, should have 3 total.
I only got 2.
So we have Hamilton is, and let's type. all right, we are missing our council president. Give him 30 more seconds.
Okay, so,
Do you want me to re-enter the meeting?
yeah.
All right, okay, recess is over. We're really adjourning back into our meeting and we have our attorney online. We have our applications in front of us and our council president will be joining us here back shortly in a second. But we still have a quorum, so we'll continue. So I have asked Matt Hamilton, who was here tonight and we are discussing his application. So I thought a great opportunity to bring him forward. And if you could take a few minutes and tell us why you are putting your name in the hat for the open position.
So ever since you held the open meeting at the North Bend Community Center, I was involved with what's going on in the city before then. And then I went there and came here the next night and it was just a huge interest, that what the council does and moving forward with the community, the economic system of the city, the maintenance of the city, like all aspects of the city. And I'd also like to see like what you're doing with the July Jubilee, what you're doing with the skating rink, more community involvement. I like that about the city and I just want to be involved.
Okay.
And it's very interesting.
I mean, you, and that's kind of why I followed you out in that, because you sat through kind of one of the worst little projects we've had to sit through in a long time, and that probably took some effort on your part to sit there and not get frustrated, just like we did. We worked through that, and I was glad to see you here through that, I guess is my point. That's my issue is you know what we went through, what you're potentially getting yourself into, and you're still here.
I wanted to say a lot during those meetings. I just had it back here by my lip.
And just to confirm, I know we've got our city administrator and our attorney here. At this point, we can ask Mr. Hamilton really any other questions with that we want. So is there any other questions from the council about why he's running or about his experience? I see your trade is welding. Went to SWAC, right?
No, I'm from Wisconsin originally. So I grew up in Wisconsin. Went to high school there, went to tech school and ended up leaving there, going into a bigger city. And then I ended up on a construction crew and I have traveled literally everywhere. I've been everywhere twice. I've been to Kazakhstan, not as many as you have, but I've been to Kazakhstan. I spent, 3 months over there. I've spent 5 years in Canada. I've worked all over the United States. And I really believe that experience, when you go and experience other places, it opens your mind. Like there's so many people here that I talk to, like the oil industry. Granted, I was into it, but when you go down to Texas and Louisiana and understand how big this is, and everybody talks about these pipelines getting shut down, they have no idea how many pipelines are actually actively running. And that's what drives this whole United States. It's, locally, our chip industry, our logging industry, our fishing industry, everything plays into just that. And there's so much more out there that actually takes place. I've been involved with other cities and seen how they do things. I was in Wisconsin and every city there does a big festival. And I would like to see these festivals here get a little bit more, bigger, more activities for the community. I don't want to speak ill, but you go to some of these and it's the same booths, and I get that, but let's, if we can add to it, I know it's a lot more out there, but it's going to take some more hard work to increase that for the community. I'd just like to see more things happen in town.
Like the administrator said, we've got limited resources. Only do
Right.
what we do. You gotta keep the lights on.
But
Anything else secondary.
there was also the term of being creative. So, and drawing more money coming in, so the city can spend more money in the community. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Counselor Nordhoff or Schultz, do you have a question?
My favorite is Polish Fest in Milwaukee. That's my favorite. It's very.
Oktoberfest is
Yeah, I have
unbelievable.
family in Wisconsin, and I know what you're saying about the South Coast. It's one petrochemical plant after another from Houston over to New Orleans and beyond that.
Yeah.
Counselor Schultz, do you have a question for Mr. Hamilton about his application or why he's running?
Nope.
Do the counselors feel like they would be able to make a decision tonight?
Well,
Or not a
we
decision
can,
tonight.
But we can't.
Come to a consensus on how to move forward?
I can.
You could? Okay, based, so I can ask that question, right? Based off of the applications, what's the best way to have this conversation since we're not only in a work
You're not
session?
voting. I mean, you're just basically.
Yeah.
Saying what
So-
your preference is. It'd be
Okay.
like saying, I don't like goal 5, but I like,
Yeah.
number 1.
So I'll ask our council president, do you have a preference on the applicants here tonight? Okay, so for the record, that would be Mr. Hamilton. Yes, okay. That is the direction that I'd be leaning in is, I'm impressed with the conversations that I've had with Mr. Hamilton and the fact that he's been to the last 14 very long council meetings. Yeah, Councilor Nordhoff,
I'm comfortable making a decision on the basis of the printed application.
okay,
Just kind of how we look at
So not doing.
other applications.
okay.
doing
And
interviews.
Councilor Schultz, are you leaning towards an applicant?
No, I have no opinion, but I'll vote when we need to vote.
Okay, and
I
I
don't
think I
think we need
heard
to
from
interview.
Councilor Gall already.
Yep.
Okay, so it sounds like we, unless there's any further questions from Mr. Hamilton here tonight, do not see the need for an official interview. And so we could ask the
Yeah.
staff then how to move forward.
So from a staff standpoint, we can do an agenda item to do an appointment under other business with 24-hour advance notice, or you can simply wait till the next, where he has time to invite family and friends and do a formal appointment swearing in during that council meeting. That's your choice.
What'd you say?
It-
Well, she's here already. Yeah.
Trying to figure out a way to word this, Councilor Nordhoff.
I think it should be on the agenda and put out as a formal agenda item for the next, our next meeting, not tomorrow night, not under other business.
Okay. I'm okay with that, having it on the 26th or moving it to the council, having an agenda item on the 26th. Are we in minority here, Councilor Nordhoff? Like there is,
I won't be here on the 26th. I'll be Sturgeon fishing.
you know, and again, we have our attorney here. There's been lots of conversation in the past about what can be in other business and what can't be on other business. Mr. Wolf, do you have any comments here?
Yeah, I mean, we're in the work session as your city administrator has said, so the council wants to put this on for tomorrow night, the council can do so.
Councilor Nordhoff, I mean, you have, yeah. Go
I
ahead.
thought we heard earlier that other business was supposed to be for emergency use only. And that's been some time, but that's what my understanding was. I think it looks better to the general public if you have it on the agenda. That's my feeling on it.
Although I believe the way I read it, as long as it was 24-hour notice or.
Yeah, you can amend the agenda within 24 hours. I, as an authority of the city administrator, have the right to amend the agenda 24 hours in advance. So once I get the will of the council, and so sometimes I just say I'll do it under other business, but yes, I can have the agenda modified this evening
Yeah.
with 24 hours
Yeah.
advance notice.
And then, and Councilor, and it's, yeah.
So it would just be appointing a new person for the position tomorrow. Is
The
that-
remainder of theirs.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the
Term.
remainder of the term.
For the remainder of the term, which is another like 18 months, being 18 months, yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it'd be best to
Okay.
amend the agenda. Our city administrator has the authority. We do it. Do we have to take action at the start of the meeting to amend the agenda?
No.
Okay.
Okay,
I actually publish and share the agenda.
And when you do that, it goes out on an email list serve. Is that how that happens? So people will be notified. Okay, so tomorrow evening, we'll make our decision.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just while I'm thinking about it, if I heard Counselor Gall say he's not here on the 26th, and if we still have Counselor Jones out,
That would be
we have a quorum,
We
this
have
board is
a
a
quorum.
quorum, so we'll still be okay. Okay, I had to think about that out loud.
Majority of the city
Yeah.
councilors.
So we're putting it on tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I know, I was just, planning ahead. Okay, all right. Let's see. And Mr. City Administrator, I do want to be mindful of the time. I know that there's a 6:30 meeting. Just wanting you to note that as well. Okay, we're still on,
Just left.
huh? Okay, so we are number 6, which is the McPherson Street Nuisance Declaration Sewer Assessment District, page 4. And Mr. City Manager, we've got our Public Works Director here.
This is an informational item primarily, and actually Mark and I have worked through this. We were anticipating bringing before council an assessment district. I just wanted to alert the city council that we have 2 people that have been without sewer for one almost a year and one about 2 months. That's because they have damage on their private property and can't afford it. One way to do that is to declare it a nuisance. We then do an assessment district, which is where we were heading. However, Mark felt we have received, and you have in your packets, letters from both involved persons. Mark felt that we could just simply put together an agreement and work it as same as an assessment district. In other words, put a lien on the property, a loan on the property, so to speak, bring sewer to them. They make payments, or eventually if they don't make payments, we have a lien on the property.
And it had nothing to do with being across the street from each other, huh?
Has nothing to do with being across. One of them actually, there's sewer lateral across the neighbor's property, which there's a big hedge on. Across the neighbor's property and tied into that, the hedge plugged their system. The neighbor won't allow them to cross their property. I would take court and fees and all that type of thing to get there. The other one, they're both well in their advanced years and just did not have the money to fix it immediately.
They've lived there for a long time.
But I just wanted to bring it before council. We were gonna bring it as an assessment district next meeting. We actually would have brought it before this one, but we have to publish it 10 days ahead of time in the newspaper, general circulation. Of course, the world doesn't publish very often anymore. So that really limited us, but I think Mark and I have worked it out. And he's preparing an agreement. They're actually looking at doing the sewer repair next week
Very good.
and getting them connected. But I just wanted to bring that forth to you, so you were well aware. And in case somebody brought it up, yes, the city's doing this and connecting them. That part of this, or that is their responsibility, but we're staving off a health hazard and declaring a nuisance.
Gotcha. Okay, Councilor Nordo.
I think it's appropriate and very helpful for the city to do it, because from, I guess, the commercial bid on the property was like in the 30,000s, and the cost to the city would be less. And I think it supports people who really don't have the means to make that 30,000 investment on their own. So I'm glad that I had not heard of this before, and I'm glad that the city's able to do it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So
You got
No.
number 7 on the agenda is our consideration of time of homeless camping, and this is page 14.
Besides me whining about the cost of signs, which I basically wrote up in the biggest issue we see with the current spread of timeframes is in understanding council's will here. We are going to allow people to camp beginning at either 8 p.m. or 10 PM on the streets that we have listed in our resolution.
Mhm.
And we are gonna ask them to leave at 7 in the morning. Which means, whether they're tent camping or they're gonna move to other parts of the city during the day. This is the overnight stay portion. The problem with multiple times, from the enforcement end is, 7 AM is great.
Mhm.
We can send people out there and
Yeah.
we know where they're at. Time to go, people. They have to pack up and be ready to leave, or there, I'm sure we'll work out some policies where there's some grace period in there. The problem with multiple times for them to be back in that area, however, is. So somebody leaves Harbor Street at 7 AM and they go park over by Safeway in a motorhome. At 9:50 PM, they can still be there. They're supposed to go to Harbor by 10 PM, or there's always gonna be a transition time. But there's no clear time. People, if they want to get their spot early, maybe go into the other camping spaces at 8 PM, but there's no clear time for people to be moving, I guess, back to these campsites. Is my biggest concern on this, with having multiple times. And just the thought, if we change these and if we're playing with times, we're trying to get a regiment here. If you're gonna be in North Bend, you can be here at this time, you can be other places at other times, but with a spread of times, the 8 PM, the 10 PM. It makes it difficult for anybody trying to enforce any of this. To get somebody moving.
Would it create less heartache for you if we were to either go to starting at 10 or starting at 8?
8 or any time you pick, it's just that way too, if you move them, let's say you declare this. Let's just say Harbor Street and you decide that doesn't work, so we give them another area like North Marion over by the airport fence. What time is that gonna be? I'm pulling down signs, do I gotta create new signs, new time frames?
Point, I mean, I think, and honestly. The 8 to me makes more sense because what you're doing is. With the 10 is you're able to keep them parked in front of your house till 10 o'clock at night.
That is
What
correct.
You're doing, and if it's 8 o'clock, then everybody's the same, and the cop driving by says. Oh, it's 9 o'clock, you got till 10, the other guy's got till 8. I know exactly where you're going with this, and I think it's the right way.
Very difficult to enforce, or because there's not a set time when you should be moving other than 7 AM.
Part of what we did was to get a spot to where they basically got it.
Yeah.
And so if we're giving them 2 extra hours or 4 extra hours in the night, we haven't really done anything. I think you're spot on there.
I don't have a problem rocking everything to 8 to 9, 8 to 7.
8 PM at night to 7 in the
Yeah.
morning. We have law enforcement here is shaking his head right now saying that would work with.
Yes.
The shift changes and,
Yeah, I think just centralizing it to one time is
Okay.
the best.
Yeah.
Just gonna be-
so right now, okay, so. This, so 7 in the morning to 8 at night, right? Or did we say, or?
No, it's the other way around.
Other-
8 at night, 7.
I'm sorry, 8 at night to 7 in the morning. Gotcha. Okay,
And
okay.
that way we have consistent signing, we have
It's
consistent,
not confusing. Okay.
and if you move them, all we gotta do is move the signs.
One time,
It's,
yeah,
it's not,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like we can go here for an hour and then Counselor Nordoff, you had a question?
So at 8 PM to 7 AM
Correct.
would be standard?
Yes.
Okay. I did thinking about this, are we going to allow parking around Grand Circle?
we can further define that. We didn't show that as part of our mapping. Because it says California, your actual resolution says. On Union Street from California to Connecticut, well, where's
Grand Circle fit in there? Because is that part of Connecticut or is that part of California? We could, in changing, because we'll have to redo another resolution at the next council meeting, which it wasn't adopted till July 1, so plenty of time.
Your Grant Circle is also a park and it's designated. And so you don't have the same.
We can further define it.
Exactly, you don't have the same parking layout for RVs. It's designed for vehicles.
And it's California street parking, and you have two houses that face Grand Circle on the north, on the west side. So I think, I agree that a resolution would kind of solve that.
And-
It's Union south of, or north of Grand Circle.
We started to develop a map, and then in doing that, we thought of the consequences of this.
Yeah.
And it just would make it very difficult to enforce, plus consistent signing. You know, if we're moving signs, if you move them, at least
Right.
Sign you there.
remove signs, that type of thing. So
So
it was a discussion item. Again, this is,
That's good. Decide.
Yeah,
Yep.
7 in the
Yeah,
morning.
7
8 at night to 7 in the morning.
So 8 PM to 7 AM everywhere. Is that-
Not everywhere,
Not
but
every-
well, be careful what you say everywhere in the designated areas.
Yes, that's what I meant.
thank you.
all
Right.
right, we'll come back to the council with the resolution at the next meeting to affect that.
Okay. Thank you. Number 8 on the agenda is the council committee discussion. I believe this is the item that at the last city council meeting, when we reported out on the committees, what were we officially called? Were we an ad hoc committee where Councilor Nordoff, I, and Councilor Jones met?
You're a council committee.
That was a council committee, right? And so is this a line item to talk about whether or not we want to make this an official committee?
So your agenda item, Madam Mayor, was the smoking on public property. And so this is Councilor Nordoff's agenda item.
No, it's not.
Well, it actually is, because you're the one that made the recommendation, and so we tagged your name to it when you pulled your other one. And so so we moved this forward. And so now it's a discussion, your committee brings it back to the council, and the council decides whether or not they want to move it forward, if I'm not mistaken, to a regular council discussion for any future additional action. And I think the city attorney researched this, and I think may have sent some communication. So if there's any questions, he can help guide us.
Okay, so, but again, to be clear, we're talking about creating, this is the discussion on whether or not the council wants to create a committee. I want to make sure I'm using the right language to look at the revisioning or the rebranding of July Jubilee. Did I say all that right correctly? Okay, and Mr. Wolf, I'm sorry, did you have something to add to this?
I'm happy to help answer some questions. I was pulling up the minutes from what the purpose of this committee was. And it was to explore future council committee options on the vision of extending the spirit of North Bend's July Jubilee throughout the year. And then last meeting, the council committee during committee comments reported back to some extent. And so we're here tonight to see if a majority of the council wants to take some sort of future action at a council meeting on the creation or the adoption of a resolution to formalize what this committee would do.
Okay. So remember Councilor Nordoff, when we had reported out, you had reported out on the committee reports, and we had that. So again, the purpose of this discussion is whether or not the council wants to move forward with creating a committee by resolution. And again, you have the wording in there, but to kind of explore the, how did you say it there? The rebranding, the visioning. I don't have my notes in front of me.
Yeah, explore the vision of extending the spirit of North Bend's July Jubilee. And so this council committee is still still in existence at this time. So there, there's maybe a couple of options. One is this committee could meet again and try to develop this resolution that the committee reported back on. Or the majority of the council could push this forward to an action item to direct staff to bring back options on resolutions. There's probably multiple pathways forward, or the
Which-
council could decide that no action is needed.
Okay, when the committee of Counselor Nordoff and Counselor Jones and I met, in our discussion, we did, for us to move forward, we wanted to have community input. And that's why we felt it needed to move to a committee by resolution. We didn't want it just to be a council committee. We wanted it to move to a committee by resolution. Counselor Nordoff.
It was a surprise to me when we met that was your goal. That was news to me. We've heard from Mr. Milliron as to commitments of staff and money that may not be there in order to do this. And I myself, I do not have time to meet with other community members at this point.
And you don't have to be on that committee. either.
I guess that was my feeling. I was thinking of what we could do on that day to maybe expand a little bit, over that weekend of different things for July Jubilee. But as far as supporting a really big expansion of it, I don't think I can give it the effort. And I'm more concerned with things like having a way better livestock and fowl ordinance. Those kinds of things, and I've gotten no support on it. Those kind of things matter to me a little more than July Jubilee. That's to be honest with you.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Any other counselors have a thought?
Comment that, July Jubilee used to be July Jubilee, and I think. And I know COVID, and I hate pulling that COVID name, people pull it like a gun and I hate it, but. I can't see, I think what's happening in the city with the Main Street, with all that stuff. We're having other functions. I think the July Jubilee, if we do something to make it a year-long thing, I think we're gonna lose the focus of the once a year, having the gals ride on a fire truck, and I think.
Birthday party.
Yeah, I think it, and I know we've lost it, I know we've lost some of the momentum and all that stuff, and I think the only way you're gonna get it back is to have people that have knowledge in North Bend, to say, hey, let's do this, so as far as the July Jubilee all year long, I'm not.
Well, we're not talking about. Right now, the point of the discussion is do we want a committee to, again, Mr. Wolf, could you read that item again for us?
Yeah, so at the last meeting. Sounds like the purpose of potentially creating through a resolution, creating a layperson committee with citizens of North Bend would be to explore ways to expand or enhance special events, including July Jubilee, which would include looking at the city's history, culture, and values.
Yeah, so we're not, this isn't a committee to make that decision.
It would be for it to, whether or not the council wants to form a committee with the purpose to bring back ideas and goals and recommendations to the full council on what these events might be.
And you just threw the July Jubilee name in there just to have it there? or
Well,
what?
because that's one of the ways that we celebrate North Bend.
Yeah. I get that way.
It all goes back to the yellow strip on our,
Right,
Yeah, I agree.
so
I don't know. I just don't get it.
You don't, let me say that a little bit louder. Counselor Garbodin does not have a problem with it. He just does not want to be on it. Hear that from Counselor Nara. We're not asking everybody from the council to be on it. Again, the purpose of creating this by committee is to also include, or creating this by resolution is to include residents, people from the community.
Oh, I think that's what you need more than anything, but yeah, and I don't know legally how you do that, other than just to have, you know, another Pat Choate Pierce take the ball and run with it, so, yeah.
Counselor Schultz?
Well, it sounds like what we're just trying to decide to do is if we want to move forward by creating an action item or again formalizing a resolution to even create that committee to invite people on. So you can't just invite people onto the committee that the city council is talking about. So they had their original committee and now they're trying to say, can we have another committee? And again, as long as I'm not on it, I'm okay with us moving it forward.
Okay. Okay. And Counselor Nordhoff, I feel like I was hearing you say that it's not the top of your priority, but you're not against it. You just don't want to be on it.
I think that's correct.
Okay, okay. So then, Mr. Wolf, I feel like I'm hearing a consensus from the council that we could move forward with that action item of creating a committee by resolution. So then what is the time? How does that work? Is this what would be next? What would be our next steps?
Yeah, so it seems to me the next step is somebody needs to put pen to paper and try to create some sort of resolution. And so it might be a question to your administrator as far as what his staff's capacity is at in order to help start this process.
Is that in a 2-week agenda item?
We have 30 days.
30 days. Okay. Is that something we can then ask staff to do?
Absolutely, yes, if that's what the
So
council.
was that what are we dissolving the committee that was in place?
You would actually be creating a new committee. yeah.
okay.
So, yeah, because
Okay.
before it was just a
Yeah.
council committee to discuss that, and then it became very clear that in our discussion that this is a larger situation than just the counselors. We need a community. And then that we would move forward with asking this body if we could create a committee by resolution. So then that would be our ask to the staff. Okay. Okay. Any other questions about that? All right. So we do have another item to review the city council agenda for June 13th. And then we also need to review the urban renewal agency for June 13th. So Mr. City Attorney or to our city administrator, do you want to walk us through the council agendas for tomorrow and the urban renewal agency for tomorrow? Yeah. We've got both packets in front of us.
Yeah, it looks like you've got 2 proclamations. One is North Bend High School girls tennis. The other is North Bend High School track and field team. Those are ceremonial. You have under the consent agenda is the minutes from your May 23rd meeting.
Can I ask a quick question here? Do you know if any of the students will be able to come tomorrow evening?
They should be here.
Okay. Should we reach back out to the golf team that didn't come the last time? Is that okay if we ask? Then, thank you. Okay. So we might have potentially three. Potentially three. It's a big track team.
How's your glasses?
I'm going to be wearing contacts tomorrow evening and 18-point font for any proclamations, please. Okay. All right. Thank you. Back to the city administrator.
All right, you've got your acknowledgement of the bills from the May 2023 for May 2023. There's the annual maintenance invoice from the library's RFID equipment. And you have a contract, which is the normal contract for the library services for fiscal year 2023. And then there's an electrical bill for pump station number 5. So if there's any questions on those, staff are available to answer them at this time.
Okay. Not hearing any questions yet.
Final bill, good job. Final bill.
Okay.
All right, then you have public comment, you have public hearing, possible uses of state revenue sharing 3335. An alternative, you can issue that money, but you might want to put it in a line item for a potential July Jubilee committee. Because I understand from Coos Bay that Coos Bay, the city sends a bill back to the organizations that run their events. So it might be an opportunity for you to look at that.
That's okay.
You then have your public hearing adoption of your fiscal year 24 budget and resolution. And then you have an award for your Oak Street paving. And that came back, imagine that, higher than anticipated. And so our Public Works Director can answer any questions about that award bid. Because it pretty much will wipe out your entire paving budget.
Oh, for Oak Street. So do we want to talk about that now? Or, because what are our options here?
Usually you discuss it at the work session and then it just moves forward on the regular meeting.
Hello, Public Works Director.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. This particular project, we have about $350,000 in our paving budget for this year. City Council set in 2020 a priority of our paving projects. We had a list of 17 projects. We're a little over halfway through those. However, Oak Street has been on that. I think it was a number 7 priority in the original one. We have tried to package some of the streets together that were mixed through. So this was our proposed project for this year. Next year's project proposed is Pony Slough Road from Crowell Lane to Washington Street. Which both of these are our major projects that we anticipated spending monies on. Since I used to feel like I was really good at estimating. This is my second oops since COVID, which I guess some people have seen more oopses than that, but this is my second oops. This bid came in 24% higher than anticipated, which leaves about $10,000 in our paving budget. Usually we withhold 50 to 75,000 to do small projects, something that pops up that wasn't on the major list but has popped up, or that we can package. Let's say wastewater is doing work, which they will be doing, redoing Chester Street lane sewer on, commercial lane sewer on, where we can, instead of just doing a half a lane or a trench with wastewater, we'll expand that. Most of our streets, as David mentioned earlier, we're on a 120-year rotation on repaving, so we try to package these things to expand that paving. So just putting a trench back in, let's do at least a full lane width, and part of that comes out of state gas. In this particular case, like I said, usually we have 50 to 75,000 to do that. In awarding this bid, that'll leave us about with $10,000 in our paving budget for partnering on other projects. You have options. We can reject the bids, just say they're too high and wait till next year. We have seen inflation fairly significant over the last 2 years, so that doesn't mean it'd be cheaper in rebidding it. Typically bidding in January or February, you have more competition. In this particular case, I know the two other contractors that normally do this work, both of them had picked up large jobs and couldn't fit it in their schedule this year. Conversely, this particular job probably fits Knife River better than any of the others. So they should have been low bidder anyway, just because with at least our local construction firms, if it's primarily paving, Knife River is usually the low bidder, even if all 3 of them bid. And this is primarily paving. So it's a risk. People are expecting it to happen because we've been telling us, we are out there surveying and doing, so they're excited about it going to happen. It's a very poor piece of road, and you have driven it. So staff recommended we go ahead and award it because we think the risk. Risk of rebidding it next year is not likely to come in
It's not
much
gonna
cheaper.
So question for you, Ralph, I hate to pick on you and stuff, but, there's no way of putting that storm drainage piping against one of your other accounts?
We are billing, you look at, this project's 483,000. We had roughly 350,000 in paving funds. Storm sewer's paying for $142,708
Okay, I didn't see that. Oh, I see.
in the project. So that's,
Yeah, I see.
we packaged that
Yeah.
that way. We're also looking at one of the items, but we have to award. I can't discuss change orders with the contractor until we have a contract. Their striping price was very high. I've already talked to the state. There's very little striping on it, so they had to pay roughly $12,000 to mob somebody down here to do a small striping project. The state's going to be striping in August, and I think we can save about $15,000 to $18,000 doing that. Having the state do it instead of the contractor, but there's some other small things in here which we can adjust, but we can't change the contract till we award it.
Yeah,
That doesn't give me $80,000 back, but it gets me a little bit.
we don't want you to have the third boo-boo, so, yeah.
Yeah.
No pressure.
Macy, on number 7, it says it's 109 and it's really 199. I don't know.
I just found it.
Yeah. Is it just- yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's what we used our.
Like those page numbers.
There any other questions?
What are the cross streets for this?
It's going from Lewis to Newmark. So Lewis, Clark. State and commercial. Contractors required to only close 2 blocks at any one time because it'll be. The traffic control will be a little exciting there, but.
Yeah, plus, notifying the neighbors of parking and.
Right.
Was this flagged by the Dyer Partnership eval as needing replacement, this section of Oak?
Yes, and part of the priority list, this was actually a priority list council adopted. A significant part of the priority list had to do with both the quality or the the paving condition and the amount of traffic. So that was a combined, because our higher traffic generates a higher priority street,
Right.
generally in poorer condition also because of the higher traffic, but not necessarily
Right.
so.
No, for my money, the worst and the most highly trafficked is this section of McPherson that we have.
It has
Well,
deteriorated. There's a couple places that have,
Going toward the post office.
there are,
And then the next block down to Montana, that is bad.
there are about 3 pieces of streets since council adopted the priority list
Okay,
that have 16ths, one of them going towards the high school. That have deteriorated more rapidly than some of the other areas and are now, if you were to do the evaluation today, you might have a different priority list, but
okay, thank you.
Things aren't gonna get cheaper, are they?
Aside from that, you have any action resulting from executive session? We anticipate no executive sessions. The city administrators report, committee reports, council committees. And other business and adjournment. Being mindful that we'll be amending the agenda to add the counselor appointment.
Okay, thank you.
That will actually be done under ceremonial.
Okay.
You then have a urban renewal agency agenda. Again, URA minutes from your May 23rd meeting. Also public hearing on the North Bend Urban Renewal Agency's fiscal year 24 budget and resolution number 67. Report from your executive director and then any public comments. And adjournment.
Okay. All right, so that takes us, let's see here. So that's it. It's adjournment. I'm just double checking. Am I missing anything? No, we're good. Okay, meeting adjourned. See you tomorrow night.